Okay, good evening. The Charter Township of Plymouth Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, May 25th, 2021 will come to order. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Stewart.
Here.
Trustee Monahan.
Here.
Clerk Vorba, here. Trustee Dorshevitz.
Here.
Trustee Kermy.
Here.
Treasurer Clinton.
Here.
Supervisor Heisey.
Here.
All present, we have a quorum.
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. How about John Stewart? You seem to be ready for action.
Ready? Front.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Also, Clerk Vorba wanted me to mention that tonight, for the first time, we are live streaming on YouTube. You have to sign into YouTube, and I think you have to have a YouTube account. But you now can watch us live on YouTube, or you can watch us any time of the day if you just replay that particular episode. And we're also live, of course, on cable. And after the meeting, we put everything up on the website. So Bob Dorshevitz is showing us right now. Look at that. We're only a slight delay.
Yep, about 30 seconds.
Okay,
maybe.
so
Good.
let's get off of that so we don't create a, I don't know, space-time continuum that could be damaging to everybody here.
1.21 gigawatts.
Yeah. Don't cross the lines, right? That was the Ghostbusters. Anyway, okay, where did we go here? Approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Clerk.
I move for the approval of the agenda, Tuesday, May 25th, 2021.
Motion's made by Clerk Vorba. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Monahan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next is item D, approval of the consent agenda. Are there any comments, first of all, on the minutes? Because I would be willing to vote those out separately if that's your desire. Mr. Kermy.
I move to take the minutes out. What is the word you want to use?
Well, I would just,
I'm going to take them off.
I'm just offering to vote on them separately from the rest of the
Okay,
consent agenda
so
items.
I'm moving to do that.
Okay,
And then D2, I'd like to do the same thing.
E2.
The D2 is.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what's, okay.
E2 is two things, it's A and B.
Yeah, that's fine, I think you.
Well, just tell us what the process is to take it off the
I
consent.
think we can just do it verbally right now. I don't think that requires a motion of any sort. We're just separating the two and making them separate voting items. So at this time, I'll take any questions or comments on the minutes.
Okay, minutes. I'd like you to add back the number of people, members of the public, which we've done for decades, typically, under also present. So as a count. For now, you probably can't do it because you don't have that recorded, but let's go to page,
Which section?
it's on the front page where it says, under roll call, it's page 1 of minutes, page 5 of the packet. And it used to say members of public.
Oh, yeah,
It
yeah.
would say 20 or 21 or something.
Right.
So let's move to, these are what I sent you,
Turn that off.
email
Turn that
on,
off.
Jerry. Take out, on page 5, the address for the public speakers. And I don't know why this one is highlighted over all the others, but it's in bold. Just take it out. That way it'll reduce the workload for your office. You won't have to track people's address. And by the way, you don't have to give your address when you come to the podium if you don't want to.
I decide that.
Really?
Yep. I've always requested that of people.
We
Sometimes
took
I
it off
forget.
and tuck it on. It's been
Sometimes
on and off.
sometimes I forget.
Okay.
Sometimes we know who the people are, but I decide that, not you.
All right, maybe we can discuss that. Page 5, the word 15th, I think is what you mean. It says 15. It's spelled wrong. Page 6, there's an address, Richard and Claudia on Woodley Way. I'd recommend taking that out. And last, which I've already been duly scolded on, is Trustee Stewart, the times he left the meeting. But I already have your scolding Jerry about it being juvenile to ask that, so I will acquiesce depending on what the rest of the board thinks.
Okay, are there any other proposed changes to the minutes?
So for years, we were told by council that people did not have to give their address. It was optional. So we might want to get some clarification on that.
Well, we'll have to ask that separately tonight. I don't want to put him on the spot tonight. He can let us know what he recommends, but this has been going on this board for longer than I've been here.
No, not the actual address, the
Yeah.
first time I've ever seen it.
I've appeared in front of this board in the past, and I gave my address. And
They
it
gave
was
your
published.
name, yeah, you did it, but it wasn't in the minutes. Wasn't in the minute. Oh, I forgot a couple of other things. There was two other people who spoke, I think with Oliansky, and there was one other person. but
And
I don't know.
Cheryl
Cheryl
Picard.
Picard, okay. You might want to add them to be consistent. They were missed by the transcriber. Some people were on and some were not. So either take them all off or put them all on. Consistency.
Okay, so we have any other changes to the minutes? All right, then the motion before us is amended minutes. I did not write all the things down. I'm assuming that
Well, I think he
somebody
wanted
did.
to not have them approved tonight until they get amended, right?
Yeah, that'd be the best way, because you haven't had time, you said, to go through it, right?
So there is a motion to table the minutes, is that?
That's right.
Well, let's have a discussion on it. What do you think's best?
I would recommend a motion to table the minutes.
All right, I move to table or postpone. We're gonna
Postpone.
Postpone to the next meeting, right?
Yes.
That's
He's
fine.
not gonna do them at the end of the meeting,
No.
or by the end of the meeting, so. All right, I move to postpone the May 11th meeting pending the suggested updates and corrections.
You mean the May 11th minutes or meeting, you said?
May 11th meeting minutes, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
you
Is that
didn't
what
say, you didn't say minutes, I'm sorry.
All right,
Okay, so the motion before us is to postpone the adoption of the May 11 meeting minutes.
Adoption, right.
Is there a second?
Second,
Second by trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll. So a yes vote is to postpone.
That's right.
A no vote is to proceed.
Correct. Trustee Stewart.
No.
Trustee Monahan.
yes,
Clerk Vorba, no. Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
yes,
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Kurt Heisey.
No. I have a name. I have a title too.
Hi, trustee, I'm sorry, treasurer.
Sue, whatever.
We have.
One of those
2,
guys.
3, we have 4 yeses.
All
Motion
right,
carries.
good.
so may I
So-
ask why you wouldn't want them corrected?
Am I correct? In the
oh.
past, we've never postponed them, we just amended them.
Amended them, well,
Yeah.
okay, well, you should have told me if that was more efficient, we could
I
have done
thought
that.
that's what you
Well,
had
we-
requested.
That was, the motion was to
All right,
postpone,
okay.
so.
All right,
Okay, so item D2, consent agenda, new business, D2 A and B. Any comments or questions on those?
yeah, I'd like to make a comment, and I'd like to vote separately on some of these, because they're all lumped together.
Yeah, we do that to improve efficiency.
I know.
And these are all reappointments except for one, and that
Right.
person is by himself on a separate item.
Okay, so let's start with the easy one. Civil Service Commission, is that on here? Or is that the next one?
Chris.
That's
B.
D2B.
2B.
All right. Since Chris is an attorney, how are we going to handle if he has a lawsuit against Plymouth Township and him being on the Civil Service Commission?
He'd have to recuse himself
From what?
from the
The
case.
lawsuit or the,
He is here
the Civil
tonight.
Service
Chris, you wanna answer that question? You have to come to the podium and give your address.
he's a personal injury attorney.
Wait. Clarification on
No.
what the objection is?
I'm sorry, Mr.
It's not an objection,
Chuck
it's to
has the
try to
floor.
understand the process.
Chuck has a question, and we're gonna have it answered.
I do not mind at all. So I just thought we were waiting for this to be called, but if there are questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Apparently
So
there's a question now.
The question is one of ethics.
Pardon?
The question is one of ethics. I understand.
Conflict of
Yes.
interest.
Conflict of
You have
interest.
you have no pending litigation against the township.
None that I'm aware of.
Do you anticipate that you will ever have pending litigation against the
I
township?
would certainly hope not.
Okay.
And if it did arise, we would follow the ethical obligations of an attorney, the ethical obligations of the firm. We would duly notify all parties. And if it proceeded, I'd either be segregated, walled off, or something else would happen. But, you know, my understanding of the ethical obligations is I would have to recuse myself, just as Trustee Monahan said, and I would not be part of that litigation.
So you'd recuse yourself from your firm's case or from the Civil Service Commission?
Civil service.
Well, I think I'd have the option of doing either, but at this point, I might actually have to do both. So if tomorrow somebody came in, I had a great lawsuit against the city, I might have to
Township.
turn, or against the township, I might have to turn that away, but certainly I'd have to address the ethical obligations. So without knowing exactly what they were and the circumstances, that's a really tough question to answer.
Okay, so, all right, that answers that one. And Kurt, the common board, the common person, Susan Bondi,
Yeah.
when was she last appointed? Or
I want to say about 2 years ago.
Okay.
She is the third-party neutral, and she's appointed by the union rep and the township rep.
All right, answers that question. So, Environmental Leadership Commission, can we have questions on them?
Sure?
All right. So these people are doing a great job and they're well-intended, but this piece of proposed ordinance that's coming today, which in my opinion is a huge intrusion on private property rights, which are enshrined in the Constitution, I have some reservations about the judgment of this group that we created, which never existed before. It's going to burden the township residents, and so I wonder why you would present us with something like this. So,
Okay,
anyway,
I am
that's my
baffled-
concern.
I am completely baffled by your question. If you don't support the Environmental Leadership Commission, then you shouldn't have voted for it. I think you did.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Well,
now.
all we're talking about tonight is the reappointment of these
Right,
people who've
okay,
already
so
served.
may we vote separate for the leadership, the Environmental
Sure.
Leadership Commission? All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so what we'll do then is.
Two sentences.
You have
if
a
I may,
question?
please?
Yeah.
No, 2 sentences. Sometimes when you question, it becomes an accusation. I strongly support, because I have had several ethical dealings of the highest degree of integrity with Chris Hunter and Susan Bondi.
Okay. So what we'll do now is we will have a motion, Jerry, on, I need a motion
A
to.
for A and B.
Yeah, well, I think Chuck wants the environmental leadership people separate. So what we'll do is we'll have a motion to approve the reappointments of the planning commissioners and the historic district commissioners. I need a motion on that.
So moved.
So moved by trustee Dorchevitz. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
So we're voting for.
This is planning and historic.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Did you call me?
Yes. Called you first.
Yeah, I just want to add that I serve on the planning commission with Dennis and Bill, and they both do a great job.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate their work.
Thank you. Okay, then, those are approved. So now what we'll do is I need a motion to approve the reappointments for the members of the Environmental Leadership Commission.
So moved.
Moved by trustee Stewart. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by clerk Vorba. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Are they here?
Some of them are.
Some of them are, okay.
Yeah, 3 of them are. The 3, they're here.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
No.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item D3, 4, my mic is hot here. So items D3, 4, I still need a motion to
Did we do the
approve
civil,
as.
did we do the civil
Oh,
service?
I'm sorry, yes, we have to do the civil
Civil
service
service.
person. Thank you, Jerry. So item D2B is appointment of Christopher Hunter to the Civil Service Commission. I need a motion on that.
I'll make a motion on that.
Motion by trustee Monahan, is there a second?
Second.
Second by clerk Vorba. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Monahan.
Yes,
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. And thank you all for volunteering your time in the service of the township. We really do appreciate that. Okay, item D3 and 4, I need a motion. I really don't need a motion. Let's see, just to approve items D3 and D4. Is there a?
No, just move,
Consent agenda.
Yeah, just move for the approval and it can be voice.
All right, so could you do that?
I move for the approval of D3 and D4.
All right, so there's been a
Consent agenda?
motion by Clerk Vorba. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Monahan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Assuming there's no questions. Aye, very good, thank you. All righty. Okay,
The comments.
public comment, limited to 3 minutes. I have my clock ready and good to go.
I guess you guys all know I'm Dwayne Zantop, been around here for a while. The minutes for the last meeting, I guess Mr. Kermey's already covered this. Cheryl Picard and Estella Lansky, they were not in the minutes. The other thing I wanted to point out is I send emails to the board all the time, and it always seems to go on deaf ears. It seems like I vote, people that didn't even vote for, at least have the courtesy to write back to me. I'm opposed by the very intrusive tree ordinance, which violates the property owner's constitutional rights. I cannot believe this board would even consider this outrageous intrusion in our lives. There are currently hundreds of lawsuits against tree ordinance of this type going on right now. Canton Township just lost a lawsuit. The judge said it was unconstitutional. Are we prepared for more lawsuits? Get the hell out of my yard.
Now let's watch our language.
Thank you.
All right, next.
Hello, Mary Ann McLaren. As Chair of the Environmental Leadership Commission, I feel as though to decide that there's an opinion to do with what's on the agenda later has nothing to do with the people being appointed to the commission. So I think there's a conflict there, and I just want to know that as the Chair of the commission, I feel as though, we are doing the best we can.
Talking about the tree ordinance?
Well, the tree ordinance and that, and tree, yeah, that's separate from deciding who should be on the commission.
Yeah.
I'm just stating that, that's all. Thank you.
Okay.
May I just please say thank you to Mary Ann and Andrew for their number one priority, which is my wife's in our township, and that's the environment.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
there's two other members, Damon and Ashley are also here.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
Good evening. I'm Donna Hospodor. I own the
Oh.
property,
Yeah.
the east side of Miller's Park. I think you got
Yes.
my memo.
Yeah, we got your email. So I got your email
Okay.
and your message, and I made copies and I gave it to the board members, so they have it.
Okay, I guess the reason why I'm a little upset about this tree ordinance is I moved into here in the 70s, and I've been here all along. When I moved in, that lot, which is about an acre long, was a mess. I've cleaned it up, cut down bad trees, planted maples, planted apple trees and cherry trees that the deer love to eat, which I've replanted 100 times. I just feel that I've taken care of that lot, and anybody that drives by there can see that it is a beautiful park, practically. And I don't want to be told what to do with that. If I cut down a large tree, I can't afford to plant a large tree. And I don't want to buckle down here every time a deer chews my cherry tree and I got to plant a new one. So I really think that, yes, I have no trees on my property, but an acre of land is a lot to take care of, a lot to cut, a lot to make sure there isn't a dandelion in there. And I'm doing my job. So I don't need anybody to tell me what to do. I think that if we all just do our jobs, it would be fine. I think the point that you're making, and I'm going over 3 minutes.
No, you're not. No, you're fine.
Is when the companies come in and they cut down acres of land, put up thousands of dollars worth of houses, and they don't plant one tree. And I understand that. And I think this proposal should be made so that it fits that particular problem, not my problem. I mean, if I chop down a pine tree, are you going to come to me and charge me $500 for that? It's unfair. And I feel as long as I keep up my property, and we all, I'm sure, keep up our property, there shouldn't be a problem. So I think this needs to be directed to the right place.
Okay. What property, Bob's putting it up on the screen behind us there. So what parcel are you talking about, right? Everything there on that corner?
Let me just, oh yeah, everything on that corner is mine.
You own it?
I own it.
Oh, good. Okay.
Oh, this corner
Thank
here?
you. Thank you for keeping it up so nice.
Look, let me,
It's landlocked by the freeway and Edward Trail.
Yeah.
that is true.
Yeah.
And it's got the fence by the bike trail, and, you know, it's all my, yep, that's mine, because I can see where the wood pile is. I mean, I spent 4 days with a broken hip, chopping wood and making sure it looked good before I had my hip repaired. So, I mean, you can see, it's perfectly taken care of. I tore down old trees, planted new maples. I don't need anybody to tell me what to do with it, and I don't think we should have this because, I mean, am I gonna come to you when I take down the cherry tree that the 5 deer just ate yesterday? I mean, I don't think it's very fair.
Right.
But yep, that's all mine.
Well, thank you very much for taking care of it so well. We drive by there a lot, and I've always wondered who keeps it so nice and neat, so that's.
Well, they
we
think
deserve
my
a-
other neighbor does, but it is actually me. And, you know, when it's 87 or 90 degrees, I'm out there pushing the lawnmower, so.
Well, I think the Environmental Commission should give you a certificate or something. That'd be kind of nice.
Thank you
On
for your
recycled
time.
paper.
Thank
On
you for your
recycled
time,
paper.
I
Okay,
appreciate
thank
it.
you, thank you. Yes, sir, next.
Rick Ward, 24-year township resident. I live on Duxbury Court. I also am here to voice my concerns and opposition to portions of the proposed tree ordinance. Basically, the private property aspects of it, you know, this thing is, you know, fundamentally unconstitutional, I think is obvious. It's a bureaucratic monstrosity. The building department in its current form, I don't think is staffed to handle the bureaucracy that comes with this. You know, site visits, plan approvals, you know, it's absurd. You know, certainly, I'm not in opposition to all of it, you know, trees on easements, public property, issues of safety, new construction. I mean, these are people that are already dealing with the building department. Seems logical that through that permitting process, there could be some oversight to the tree aspect of it. But for a private citizen in our own backyards, I mean, this thing is a bureaucratic, overreaching, unconstitutional nightmare. And frankly, it's a little disturbing that I would have to come up here and speak to that. I mean, it's government overreach at the extreme. I mean, it's my yard, they're my trees.
Okay. Well, I think when you, stick around for our discussion on that.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
Name's Bob Newton, live in Beacon Hill subdivision. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm against the tree ordinance also. I've talked to many of my adjacent neighbors, and they're also against this tree ordinance. I don't know one person that was for it. We feel that we should be able to landscape our property the way we like, without the township telling us what trees we can remove and how many trees will have to be planted as a result of removing these trees. Just another example of the government telling us what we can and cannot do. I am assuming that over 90% of the homeowners take pride in their properties the way it looks. If this means removing a tree in their property to improve the appearance, they should have the right to do that without asking. With this ordinance, I think you are targeting the few and hurting the majority of the homeowners. Landscape doesn't last forever. I planted some trees roughly 22 years ago that are just too large at this point. They are encroaching the lawn, making it difficult to mow the lawn. They need to be removed. I planted these trees, so why should I have to get a permit to remove something that I planted? We are also investigating the possibility of landscaping our yard. This will entail removing some of the trees. I don't want to have to go to the township to get their permission to what I can and can't do. My intent is not to landscape to make the property look worse. I should have the right to design my landscaping without having the township approving it. What is the purpose of this tree ordinance? Just to get some of the beautification notoriety while taking our freedom away. Obviously, you guys think the township currently looks nice, otherwise you wouldn't be considering this notoriety. And the current beauty of the township with all its trees isn't a result of the township regulating the trees that remained and the trees that got cut down in the past. Lastly, I would like to suggest that ordinance like this be voted on by the citizens of the township. Most people don't know what gets reviewed at these meetings, and they don't take the effort to attend. I would think that most people get the township email newsletter. I don't know why these items like this cannot be added to the newsletters and create a link so that people can vote on it. If nothing else, since you represent the citizens of the township, you will be able to see how the majority of the people in the township vote on or represent items. So lastly, I recommend that you don't vote on this tree ordinance.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, we're not voting on anything tonight. This is discussion only on the tree ordinance.
Hi, my name is Lisa Denny's. I also live on Concord, so I'm Dwayne and Bob's neighbor. So I am one of those people that never attend these meetings. But, so I did have issues with the tree ordinance that was brought up. It is probably a little different than Dwayne and Bob's issues. So mine are more in the specifics of like certain things, like there are trees that are recommended, there's an invasive species that's recommended, there's an exclusion from planting all willow and populous trees, and it doesn't, there isn't a really good reason behind that. Willow is an important pollinator species. It's one of the earliest pollinating plants in Michigan. So I have an issue with some of those specifics. I do agree, there might be, you wouldn't ever want to plant a willow probably anywhere in your front property or over a water line, because they will find your pipe. There's other things, as the spacing is too great of a distance. Trees kind of naturally grow a little closer. If you go to Miller Woods, then you could see that. So I think that that's going to restrict people from planting trees on their property, rather than having the opposite fact. I do agree with the value of planting the trees. So that I agree with, because it does have environmental benefits, economic benefits, mental benefits. So then I'm just concerned that some of these things are going to be prohibitive of that. And of course, water quality is a big one. There is a huge amount of water in our neighborhood. So I don't want anything that's going to discourage people from being able to plant a responsible tree in certain places. Just to go back to something I forgot to mention. So an invasive species, because a lot of people have a hard time with this, understanding this, is non-native that causes harm to people, the environment, or economic harm. So this is stuff that's going to cost us money in the long run. People make recommendations and then they backfire. Okay, and the other thing, a couple other little things. The time frame for pruning is too short. If there is an issue, you might not be able to, I know that this had came up before with sidewalks. The 30 days, you might not be able to get a contractor out there. If it is the case, if there's something where it's an oak, you can't really prune those until winter, or else you might cause all your neighbors' oaks to die. So then, the person would have to be you know, unless what it has is worse. Okay. So I think the replacement or removal of invasive species should be excluded from requiring any type of permit. You know, I just spent numerous hours taking out buckthorn, and it's all throughout the neighborhood. And then I think that either permits for planting trees may prohibit plantings. Okay,
Okay,
is that my time?
yeah.
Okay, and
Gave
then
you a few
if
extra
someone has
seconds.
multiple
But
trees.
you can also talk, you can also make a comment when we get into that agenda item
Oh,
too,
okay.
okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can talk 2 more times.
Thank you. Next.
So I don't have to speak then, we're gonna be allowed to speak when we get.
Yeah, everybody's allowed to speak on individual agenda items as long as they are germane to that topic. Okay. All right, anybody else? Yes.
Dan Callahan, 42500 Clemens Drive. I do not support the proposed township tree ordinance. We are a township, not a city like Dearborn and Livonia. Typically, our lot sizes are larger than the cities, which seems to give us a more country feel. This ordinance seems to more like a scheme for more revenue to some degree. The current administration will tax us beyond belief soon enough.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Terry Begas. I live on Revere Avenue. And when I first moved here, which was about 4 or 5 years ago, I had a big old hairy 60-year-old tree right next to my house. I would not have bought it if I had to go through crap to do what I've done with this house. And this is extra crap as far as I'm concerned. A fee to remove a tree on my property. I mean, a permit. I did what I needed to do with this house, which was a lot, to bring it into this decade, and the yard work in the back was a lot. It was too close to the house, and with insurance, you know, would my insurance be higher because the tree was too close to the roof? You know, I just had a roof put on last year, and it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of money, and I did it myself. And I think it's ridiculous. You know, I'm a little bit nervous, but to be up here. But I am a little late to the game. I just read about this today. I'm here now because I know what work was involved and what needed to be done. And I think it's ridiculous. I don't know what the purpose of you asking for a permit and to replace a tree. I would never replace a tree that close to the house. So maybe I'm missing something. I don't know what your purpose or agenda is. All I can see is revenue, like he said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next.
Hi, I'm Stella Liansky, 46280 Green Valley Court. Mine is short and sweet. I'd like to say that I would hope that we still have property rights in Plymouth Township. It's copied from the city. We are not the city. The city is their very own entity. It has a Democrat commission. I thought we had a Republican board, and that should reflect the values of the party. The other question is, if we're going to do things the way the city does, then they allow their dogs in the park. And I have one more question. I'd like to see the study in the presentation that's there by the Arbor Day presentation. There's a page that talks about value, and I'd like to see the data that went into the study that talks about how humans instinctively prefer natural settings, which increase employee productivity, reduces symptoms of ADHD, decreases crime, and eases stress and anxiety, because if a tree can do that, then it's got a lot of power. So thank you.
Trees are wonderful, aren't they?
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All righty. Okay, we're going to move on to item F1, new business. Temporary outdoor seating permit renewal. A year ago, we did this for the businesses that were being adversely impacted by coronavirus. Even though most of those restrictions are being lifted, we have had still some requests from local businesses, restaurants, and bars who have wanted to still maintain outdoor seating. And right now, we've got 2 that have made that request. We would just like to extend that same courtesy to them again for this calendar year. It would expire on November 1st, 2021, and we approved this, I believe, unanimously last year, and I'd appreciate your support again.
I move that the Plymouth Township Board of Trustees hereby adopt Resolution 2021-05-25-38, authorizing the implementation and use of the temporary outdoor seating permit, such permit to automatically expire on November 1, 2021, unless otherwise reauthorized by the board.
Motion is made by trustee Kermy, seconded by trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item F2 is another item that is just for discussion only, no votes tonight. This is the proposed attestation policy for pre-Medicare retirees. The cover memo speaks for itself. I don't want to have to read it to everyone, but we do have here tonight our benefits consultant, Mr. Steve Matar, and his assistant, Fred Elias. And Steve, if you'd like to come up and explain to us what does attestation mean and what kind of potential financial impact it might have on the township.
Sure, thank you. Again, my name is Steve Matar with Corporate Benefit Solutions. My company is an advisor to the township on the group benefit programs here. And we were tasked by members of the board to do an analysis of potential cost savings by the township enforcing what we would call other group coverage available options for the under 65 retiree population of the township. And do you happen to have the slides that we sent over? It's okay if you don't.
I don't think so.
You mean this one? Check the calculations?
Unless they were put on
It's fine,
the
I can speak to
desktop.
it. In a nutshell, employers use spousal carve-outs as a means to control healthcare expenses.
Here they are, Steve.
Great, there you go. So, and in layman's terms, a spousal carve-out generally means an employer will not offer spousal coverage to spouses of employees, in this case retirees, who have other coverage available to them through their employer, other group coverage available. And the same logic would apply to retirees who retire from the township under the age of 65, who get other employment and have other coverage available through their new employer. It's a very common practice in the private sector. It's under a lot of consideration by many public sector entities today as a method to help control costs, whether it be deficit spending or future OPEB obligations, to say, hey, this is an opportunity for us to find a better way to skin the cat, in a sense. And it also offers the employees, the former employees, the retirees, if they opt out of the program, an opt-out benefit, which they currently have available to them, of $3,900 per calendar year. So if you opt out and take your new employer's coverage, as you would be mandated to do under this scenario, you'd get a payout of $3,900. And the savings that is seen here, if you want to flip the next slide, please. Savings for these types of programs comes several ways, primarily 2 ways. For self-funded plans, the savings is generally from the carve-out through administrative savings and secondarily through claims experience, because in a self-insured plan, there is no underlying insurance company, there's just a third-party administrator. The claims are paid by the entity. For a fully insured plan, the savings are primarily through premium dollar savings. So the township is a hybrid of this, because the township is fully insured, but it also has a health reimbursement arrangement, which is, not to get too weedy, but it's a program that offsets the out-of-pocket costs to the employees, but it's a direct cost to the township. So the township would save on both of these sides of the equation, so potentially large savings. And key points of interest that we put together, again, for discussion, is that, as I mentioned, many private sector companies have other coverages available, rules in place. This is not uncommon. You probably know people who, work, husbands and wives, and one will be not able to be on the other's plan. It's very common practice in the private sector. 2012, the Michigan Electrical Employees Union implemented a working spouse rule, saying that it requires all spouses to enroll in their spouse's health care plan. They also require an affidavit every year to that, which is what we're investigating the opportunity to do for the township. In 2013, UPS, we all know UPS, package delivery company, eliminated coverage for working spouses who had access. But it's important to note several things as well. One is, you say, well, gee, if we lose coverage through the township, how can we get new coverage? And again, it would only be for those people who would be losing coverage or who have coverage available. And if they lost coverage, the new employer or the spouse's employer, if it was one or the other, have an obligation under HIPAA to have an event, a qualifying event, to let those folks into their plan, their respective plans. So there would be no loss of coverage. And the potential savings here, again, is very large. So to reiterate, it would only apply to people who had other coverage available, right? And it would only apply individually to a retiree or their spouse on an individualized basis. So if I had a spouse who was working somewhere and had coverage available to him or her, it would not affect me as the retiree unless I also had another job and had other coverage available to me. So that would sort of divide, and if there were children involved in a family situation, the retiree and their spouse could decide who would cover the children. So it would be an option there as well, okay?
So those are two issues. Those are two separate questions. One is, should we mandate that the spouse take coverage if available? And the second is, should we mandate if the retired employee also has that? So those are really two questions, right?
You could separate that. Yep. In our task analysis, it was both. It was all of that. So we looked at that from a collective standpoint. But yes, you could separate that.
Okay.
We did do an analysis of that from a potential cost savings. This is totally hypothetical, okay, and it does not zero in on any one particular person. But what you see here on the screen is an employee count attestation, pre-attestation, which is the blue column, showing 22. There are currently 22 pre-65 retirees who have coverage through the township, which is great. Interestingly, there are also 13 additional pre-65 retirees who have already opted out of the program. So roughly a third of the total population of pre-65 retirees are already choosing to opt out, and almost assuredly, those folks have other coverage available either to themselves or through their spouse, and they're opting to take the cash payout in lieu of taking the township's benefits.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Can you explain to me why we need to pay $3,900 to the people who have otherwise coverage for the benefit of what? Why do we do that?
Well, again, this is not something I'm proposing. This is something that's in place. And
Okay.
this is a negotiated benefit that has been enforced for some time.
So in other words, that's something that if we wanted to see more cost savings and the otherwise retired people have insurance that they can obtain elsewhere, we're actually paying them for what? For benefits that...
Well, actually, it's the opposite. These are people who have the option of getting onto Plymouth Township's benefits, but they are using the benefits that they have either from another employer or from a spouse. So if one of our retired employees opts out, that means they're getting their insurance from another source. To me, this is a great cost savings for the township because we're only paying $3,900. And if we were insuring a retiree and their spouse and perhaps their family, that could go up to $27,000
No,
a
it's
year.
30,000 this year.
Okay.
Is it, Eli, I get that,
To
Mark?
that point, the rates you see here, the monthly rates, those are the monthly rates of insuring, for example, a single person, just under $1,000. So to save the 12, you'd spend the 3,900.
So it's an incentive for them to get off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Private companies do it, but it's typically $50 or $100 a month. Same thing, it's an incentive.
It's common in public sector labor agreements everywhere. It's been going on for years.
So can you explain the HRA, what is meant by that?
Sure. The health reimbursement arrangement is a scenario that the township's had in place for many years. And in essence, what the township does is buy a high deductible healthcare plan. And that high deductible healthcare plan costs less to the township. And the township basically self-insures that high deductible to the employees. So the out-of-pocket experience to the employee, if someone went in, and I'll just make this up as an example, if somebody went into the hospital and had a $50,000 surgery, they would have a bill for $0 because the township pays the deductible and out-of-pocket expenses.
So it's basically layered on top of the
Yes.
Blue Care Network?
Yes, but to finish that thought, if we were to buy a plan that had a $0 deductible, the cost would be tremendously higher. So the logic is that not everyone's going to use the plan, and there's this balancing act between taking that risk on, as the township has done for many years, and say, we'll take the risk of self-insuring that small portion by buying the lower cost plan. And indeed, our analysis over the last 3 years has proven that's been a very, very good scenario for the township because very few people are hospitalized or use their deductibles throughout the year. To continue on here, you'll see the total monthly costs for singles, couples, and families. And we also have a line in there. So the total monthly premium is $35,000 for those 22 people. The monthly retiree contributions to that are $3,574. It's the money collected from the various retirees for their portion of the cost of the plan. And so the total annual cost is $378,000. The count estimate on a post attestation, and we would require through our analysis, this is what we are suggesting. If you implement something like this, is what you would do, just the way we saw that these other companies out there are doing, is you have to attest that the fact that, gee, my wife works but does or does not have coverage, or my husband works, or I am working somewhere else and I do or do not have coverage available. You have to attest to that every year. And if you do that, and we presented to these 22 individuals, our estimation, and it is just that, it's an estimation, our estimation is that approximately 6 of those people would probably have other coverage available. And so if those 6 people, and for random selection, we took 2 singles, 2 two-persons, and 2 families out of the equation, it could be more than that, it could be less than that, and we did the numbers for that, so we had still the same monthly rates, but the total monthly premium drops down to $23,000. Accordingly, the amount of contribution would drop because there'd be less employees paying their share. So it would drop down to $2,400. And then we have the annual opt-out payment of waivers. That's the total of the $3,900 times the 6 people. So that's the $23,000 you see there, $23,400. The lost annual revenue, that's the $2,400 times, I'm sorry, it's the difference between the $3,500 and the $2,400, so that's almost $14,000 of quote-unquote lost revenue. Annual savings to the township, in our hypothetical example, is $99,000. So that's not in stone, that's not 100% reality, but it is a large number, and it gives us some pause to think this is something that would be a sizable amount of money to consider for making this change. Whether or not that's something that the board votes on one way or the other is not part of this discussion. But or my discussion, but it's simply just to present the facts and tell you what I see.
Steve, what kind of employee are we talking about here? Is this primarily police and fire retirees?
Fred, do we have a count on that? Yeah, Fred says it's primarily police and fire, but it is spread out amongst all the unions.
Why primarily police and fire? Is that because they can retire at an earlier age, pre-Medicare?
That would be my guess. Yeah.
Okay.
You said that it's common in the private sector to see this. How common?
Say probably, based on my experience, roughly 25% of companies out there are doing some sort of spousal attestation. The other side of that equation with respect to retirees, pre-65 retirees, is very uncommon in the private sector, so that sort of doesn't apply on an apples-to-apples basis. But I'd say at least 25% of our employer groups are having some sort of spousal attestation or surcharge or some sort of paying to the employee to say, you know, we don't particularly want to have your spouse if he or she has coverage available.
Okay, so when you say uncommon, if somebody's 55 years old and retires from a private company, they do not have attestation, is what you're saying?
They don't have insurance.
They don't have coverage,
They have zero insurance.
generally speaking.
All right.
In the private sector. There are union segments that do, but certainly in a non-union segment, and certainly in most instances, people who are under 65 would have to buy the majority of their coverage, especially in entities of your size.
Yeah, this would be considered a small company.
Yes.
I could not find any comparable or nearby communities that have attestation. I asked John Clark, our labor attorney. He is not familiar with any either. I just want to put that out there.
Correct, and neither could we. So it is not at all common in the public sector.
So you're using the term attestation in a blanket term to describe this concept.
Well, the attestation is simply what I would use to describe the methodology for asking retirees, pre-65 retirees, to tell you, the township, whether or not they and or their spouse has coverage available. And that would be part of the equation, and there would obviously have to be some sort of penalty for failure to be honest on that. But that would be the scenario that every year you'd have to go through that exercise of saying, yep, I'm not working, neither is my wife or husband or whatever the case may be, and go through that to attest to it.
I would like to make a couple comments, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. I understand the $100,000 savings. I spent a lot of time over the past week talking to representatives in the police department and the fire department and looking in detail of all of the people that are covered under this plan. My takeaway is that we're not going to achieve significant savings in the next year, maybe in the next 2 years. It's not to say it's not going to happen. In fact, I think it is going to happen. If you look at retiree health care costs right now, they're expensive. There are still, as you can see, there's, what was the number? It's 22 plus 13. So there's 35 retirees that are currently in this category that we're paying health care for. There are still 50 more to come. There's 50 eligible employees, active employees today that will become one of these people. So our healthcare costs for retirees between now and the year 2035 is going up. It's going to double in the next 15 years. So this is not an insignificant issue or an insignificant expense. I'm torn on this issue, to be honest, because this is something that we promised our firefighters, our public, our police, our other people, that they would get retiree health care benefits for the rest of their lives and their spouses when these contracts were signed. But I think they would be reasonable in working with us to see if we could achieve a common goal. which is to save money and reach some type of a compromise in case they can't find insurance that is comparable to what we're offering today. So I don't think this is a critical issue this year. It's going to become a critical issue. And my suggestion or my thought would be that we can start to have these discussions with the unions. We can figure out how we can reach a common goal, which is to provide them with the safety that they were promised in terms of insurance, but at the same time achieve a goal of seeing if we can't cut this cost, because as I said, it's going to double between now and the year 2035.
May I follow, or? No,
Yeah.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Go ahead, you spoke first.
No.
Go ahead.
I yield to you.
All right. I agree with the discussions. That's a good idea. And this is just a matter of negotiating is we don't have a labor agreement with retirees. You know that. So we're doing a different thing here. I'm a proponent of this, and we've talked about it for 3.5 years, and this is why, is whatever we save, we put into the trust fund for paying off these benefits. Remember, we increased our property taxes for Plymouth Township 40% in 2018 to pay for this and some other things, but mostly related to retirees. So if we got lucky and put 50,000 extra a year in, that would help. So what we have here is we're not putting people on the street. If they don't have insurance at their new employer, they stay with us. If their new employer fires them or they decide to quit, they can come back to us. No private business would ever allow that. So, and many of these people, if you said it's predominantly fire and police, they're retiring with a $70,000 approximately per year retirement. And then they get another job at Northville for $80,000. They're making $150,000 a year. They should be on Northville or Schoolcraft College or XYZ's insurance. It would help us. But talking about it, that's what we're doing. And I don't expect an absolute no answer from, I know that a lot of department heads have been actively involved in discussing this. And the math is somewhat unpredictable. One suggestion that came from some of our management was to send letters to see what people's status is. Do they have insurance elsewhere? So this, trying to reduce costs, the voters of Plymouth Township came forward, raised their taxes 40%. We need to have, as elected officials and employees, alike skin in the game mentality. So
I agree with you.
It does work. It would take some good administration. It will take integrity by the employees. You know, they can lie, or they can have, as one department head said, well, they could just tell their employer to send a letter to us that they're not offering me insurance. I doubt whether the employer would do that if they were in a class that required insurance or that they would get insurance as a benefit. So gaming the system, I hope nobody would do that if we ever adopt this. So I think it's a great idea to be working. We need to continue to talk about it. I don't want to see it categorically no or categorically yes right now, but let's remember our goal setting. 4 of us up here set this as the absolute highest priority, a number 5. 4 out of 7. So remember, I'm not the only one it's just an idea that I tended to cultivate, but others appeared to have agreed by voting as a 5 as a highest priority. So that 2 cents, let's hear some more.
So a couple of things I'd just like to mention. One is the legality of all of this. I know that there is a lawsuit that was filed in Macomb County because I believe it was the county of Macomb, that government, that did some changes to retiree health care. And that lawsuit went all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court, and the county prevailed. And our attorney, our labor attorney has last year or even before that rendered an opinion on that. And if you need a copy, I can get that for you. That's still the law of the state right now. But what concerns me is our Supreme Court in Michigan has changed since that ruling. And I'm hesitant to become the test case for the new lawsuit that would eventually go to the Michigan Supreme Court. And I suspect that given the new makeup of the court, that we would probably not prevail. So I just want to throw that out there as a concern. The other thing I have to say, and I really didn't want to go there, but the voters of Plymouth Township in 2018 approved a tax increase in part because our OPEB, which is other provided employee benefits, that's the health care that we provide to retirees and others, was funded at zero, okay, which is financially and fiscally irresponsible. And it had us in trouble with the state of Michigan. So we had to come up with a get-well plan that we had to send to the state of Michigan to get us out of trouble. So again, it was fiscally irresponsible for the previous administration to put us in a situation like that. Similarly, our pension plan, I don't know, Mark, when we started, what was it funded at, 40%?
No, it's always been the pension plan has always been fairly well funded. Roughly, it's gone from like 62 to 68.
Yeah, and it keeps going up because we are putting the requisite amount of money into that plan. It's not a pay-as-you-go type of system that we had before. And again, I'm familiar with other boards, commissions, cities, townships, and other governmental entities that are 100% funded in OPEB or almost 100% funded in pension. And that's the fiscally responsible thing to do, and that's what we did. So I just want to, since we're very concerned about what goes into the minutes nowadays, I wanted to clarify that for the future. Mr. Stewart?
I concur with all the previous comments. Cost savings is wonderful. But I think there's one major issue here. And I want to say a couple of magic words that I'm sure everybody will jump on the bandwagon for. Have the employees been informed? Have the union stewards been asked their opinion? Has the chief of police and the chief of fire, in attracting top, high-level, quality firemen and police, been consulted? Rhetorical question. I think they should be. And I have asked the supervisor this week in our discussions for permission to speak to every union steward throughout the township, no matter what area. I don't like it when other trustees choose to correct the spelling of my last name, because I accept S-T-E-W-A-R-D, because that's an honorable term. I better be kind to you and tell you, I'm a trial lawyer, 42 years in Wayne County. So I'm more than intimately acquainted when we go after benefits like this in a divorce case. So let's go back to informing our chief of police and our fire chief. Let's give them a chance to talk to our employees and throughout Plymouth Township. And if somebody wants to bully and refuse to inform the union, shame on them.
Steve, another comment or another thought. You said in private industry, right now attestation is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but fairly common and becoming more common. My concern here is it will become more common in government. And here's why I'm concerned about that. Today we have 13 people that are on the opt-out plan. And it's a fairly common scenario right now. It's in several of the cases we have a retiree who retired from the township, and we have their spouse that is employed by the school district. And today the school district has a very good insurance plan, so the school district, our employee opts out, takes the check for $3,900 and gets covered under the school district. My concern is all of a sudden the school district becomes aware or becomes educated and starts to implement this attestation. What does that mean? It means our retiree that was on the school insurance is now going to come over to ours. And instead of paying an opt-out of $3,900, we're now paying $25,000 a year for insurance. So it almost seems like this attestation, in whatever form it takes, could be a defensive strategy for us, so we don't get floods of people that are currently on another insurance plan choosing not to opt out anymore, and our coverage becomes even more expensive. Does that make sense?
I didn't
I'm
quite
confused.
I don't get
follow that.
Okay, here, let's just, let me use just a practical example. We have and this is not a real example, but a practical example. We have a firefighter who's retired.
Yeah.
And has a spouse who's currently employed by the school district. They opt out. They're getting their insurance through the school district. And they're taking a check from Plymouth Township for $3,900 to opt out. Now let's say the school district implements this attestation policy. They say, do you have insurance opportunities elsewhere? They go, well, yeah, I could get it from Plymouth Township. Boom, they come over to Plymouth Township. Now it costs us $25,000 a year instead of opting out. So if we don't have attestation, we will be on the receiving end of all these people who now all of a sudden have to opt in.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And the other point, you know, I mean, we talk a lot about, you know, government ought to mirror the behaviors of the private sector as much as possible. We all know that. But if that number grows from 22 to 50 at some point, times 25,000 is $1.4 million a year.
Which is
It will be more than
exactly,
25,000 by that time.
Yeah.
It'll be a lot more than 25,000 by that time. It's a lot of money.
yeah.
So really what happens is that you could risk having other people come back to the plan,
Yeah.
or you can see more immediate savings by having the attestation clause now.
So
Or-
it certainly is worth the discussion and
Yeah.
the study to figure out how we can address this better. I think Chuck's comment was a good one. It's not a solid no, and it's not a solid yes.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in between there, and I'm hoping that we can have reasonable discussions, that we can reach a
And I mean,
beneficial
and I
conclusion for everybody.
appreciate, you know, promises that were made in past generations. I mean, there's, you know, there's some level of honor to that, I guess, to honor those contracts. But I think in 1975, nobody understood that it was going to cost, you know, it would bankrupt some communities, the legacy costs.
A lot of times, they're bankrupt because they did not fund them appropriately at the right time. We're a prime example of that. The previous administrations did not fund OPEB appropriately, even though they made these promises, they did not fund it. We tried to correct that, and the public realized that we had made those promises, and they voted yes overwhelmingly for the bond issue, or the millage issue. I mean, there's detrimental reliance. I mean, people rely to their detriment on promises made, and they guide their or plan their life around these promises. And so we have to be very careful in doing that. Mark, thank you for bringing up the possibility of 50 other people coming on. Do you have a worksheet that shows when each one of those people are going to go on?
Yeah.
And accordingly, as people go on, some people go off. And so I would like to see kind of a static graph on that. And
Yeah.
thank you for doing that.
When they go off, typically the assumption is they go to Medicare.
Well, whatever way, you know, die
Or they
or,
die.
you know, get assassinated or,
That's
you know, whatever the, you know.
We'll assume they go to Medicare,
Okay,
nothing
you know.
that catastrophic.
I didn't know if members of the board would go around.
There's no record of anybody being assassinated.
Yeah, so there's different ways of going off, but they do go off. And so I would like to kind of see those trend lines and have projections, so we don't think, oh, there's gonna be 50 more, now it's 72. You know, it's going to be some.
Yeah, I get
Well, on
that.
the,
I get that.
I'm sorry, Bob, but just to answer that, I am on the agenda the second meeting in June to give an
Yes, you
update
are.
on both the pension plan and the OPEB plan, and I will share with you some of the graphs that I did a couple years ago that show those trends in our retirees and when the costs are going up and when they're going down. It's,
Well, could we have an updated, because now that was a couple years ago, so we have X number of employees that could potentially be on this at what year? And so you could have situations where now people are retiring, let's say at 55 as a policeman or a fireman, may say, well, I'm just going to work till I'm 60, and you're going to be paying. So all kinds of scenarios can happen, but I'd like to see a chart of hire date, projected retirement or potential retirement time, that's 25 years or whatever that is, and have a graph showing that so that we can make more informed decisions. But I'm a person who thinks about promises made, promises kept, for people who plan their lives around that. And I think detrimental reliance is a real serious issue.
50-year promises are
I agree
difficult
with
to
you, but
project.
there's also, there's no guarantees in life.
So this issue has been put on the
Trust
agenda
me.
for 2 weeks from tonight.
Not this issue, no, it's just gonna be a status update in terms of where, every year I have to file a report with the state to give an update in terms of our funding status for both pension and OPEB. And I'll give a
That's why
quick
the
update on
report
that.
is on the docket. Forgive me
For
using
June.
lawyer language, is on the docket for June 8th.
No,
the
the second meeting in June, or it might even be July. I haven't decided
Oh,
yet.
okay.
And I really,
In the
Mark
next
has
month or
to
so.
prepare everything, so I'm really going around his schedule.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make one observation, going back to the $3,900, if you multiply that by 22, my math is correct, it's $85,800. That alone almost gets you to where you're going to be with the attestation clause.
So you're suggesting maybe as a middle ground, eliminate the opt-out?
Well, it's just a matter of discussion. I mean,
Not a
I
bad
know
idea.
it's something that you said is given to people pre-employment, but is that something we might want to look to change?
Are you saying that the opt-out 3,900 would essentially cancel out the annual
Well,
savings? or
not
has that
exactly
been baked
about,
in?
it's going to be about.
Has that been baked in by you guys?
No, I think if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that if all 22 were off the plan,
Right.
which wouldn't be real, but if they did, if all 22 were off the plan and we paid them all $3,900, yeah, that'd be a big chunk of change. But the savings on the premium dollars on the other side of that equation would be massive. It would be 378,000.
Well, were you saying that they're getting coverage someplace else, so why pay them 3,900 and you save that? Is that what you're saying?
That's my point.
Okay.
My point is that amount that we pay them when they
Right
have
now.
other coverage at $3,900 comes out to $85,800 for those 22 people. You, with this attestation clause, if I can see correctly, it's $99,912. And yet, if we just looked at the $3,900 we're giving, we could have a savings of $85,800.
I think we're only giving 3,900 to 13, right?
13 folks are
Okay,
getting the
so-
3,900
That's
currently.
still,
It's still money.
yeah, that's still 42,
That's
$43.
that's not reflected up here.
Okay, it's still my point is, it's
Yeah.
still a chunk of change.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm about promises too, but at some point, we have to be realistic. We've asked, and I wasn't on the board at the time, but if we asked the taxpayers to help fund a deficient fund for this kind of medical coverage, we have an obligation as this board to also see where we can fairly cut. And if you're talking about 42,000, that's a large chunk of change. And it seems to me that if someone already has coverage, they shouldn't have to have an incentive.
Well, my concern, Audrey, is all plans are not created equal. And we have a very good plan here in Plymouth Township. And I think whenever a couple or a family is looking at their options, they're going to look at, what if I was on Plymouth Township's plan? Or what if I was on the other plan plus $3,900? They're doing a cost-benefit analysis. My concern would be if we removed that $3,900 opt-out, it wouldn't save us money. It would cost us a lot more money because all those people would then come back to the Plymouth Township plan, which they are entitled to do.
But that's a really interesting question that we're not going to really be able to answer because we don't know the people's motivation. But are they truly motivated to opt out because of the $3,900? Or is the $3,900 just a free money, because they're going to opt out anyway.
They use the $3,900 when they go to the other plan to pay their deductibles and things like that.
But they don't have to, do they?
And in reality, if I could chime in on this,
Yeah.
it's really a situation where most people, I think, at least statistically speaking, most people spend somewhere around $700 or less per year. That's sort of a national average of healthcare cost on an individualized basis. Now, that's not-
700 a year for what?
Deductibles.
going to the doctor, going to the pharmacy for a few drugs.
That seems like a really small number.
It is, but it's that 80-20 rule. 20% of people are spending hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. So the average person is thinking to themselves, I am not going to incur this cost. And if my spouse has good coverage and I get $3,900 to offset those out-of-pocket expenses, maybe the higher deductible or whatnot, then I'm going to be better off. I'm going to win. It's a gamble, but your plan, as Mark was pointing out, is exceptionally rich. So to get someone to leave your plan where virtually most things are covered 100%, it takes a little incentive because people aren't just going to walk away from that. They want to say, hey, give me a nudge and I'll walk out.
It's gold-plated
It's-
Cadillac
it's-
is what it is.
It's
the plan.
probably a better plan than 90% of our residents have that don't work in public sectors. And I think families that have gone through crap storms are not really going to have a lot of sympathy.
So it's tough stuff. And putting any savings into the OPEB trust fund, we're not going to spend the money on frivolous things. It's going to go in that trust fund, is what I would recommend. Anything we save. Because in the end, we have to pay the bill sooner or later. In fact, by the way, our defined benefit pension, if things go well, beginning in 2028, we won't be paying any money to that, we hope. We will have paid it off.
Good.
Nice.
Okay, does any other board member have any questions for Steve or
Thank you. That was
anyone else? What about
What's the
members?
next step?
Thank you.
What's the next step for
Well, the
us?
next step, I mean, the attorney has drafted a draft policy along with Steve and our attorney our labor attorney have drafted that. It's ready for approval, not tonight, but, anytime the board wants to do that, let me know and I'll be happy to put it on the agenda.
That was drafted by the attorneys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to kick
Don
it around
Clark.
a little. I think this has been a really very, very valuable and fruitful conversation. I appreciate these comments. I'd like to kind of chew on it a little bit.
Chief?
The chief wants to speak.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can just have one thing.
Sure.
And, it's a difficult question and a difficult topic, but it's hard when we're comparing our public safety officers to the private industry. I have a police officer that was shot about 5 years ago, 2 blocks from here. He got his fingers blown off. He can't hear. He can't work any longer. We had an officer last night at midnight got rear-ended at 100 miles an hour. All right, so when we're trying to compare those guys to the private industry, you can't do that. All right, sure, are there benefits that they have that other people don't have? Well, if you're an accountant, you probably aren't working Christmas, and you're not working the midnight shift. So, there's trade-offs. It's difficult to compare us, public safety guys, to the private industry, unless we're going to look at everything. Let's give them cost sharing. Let's give them benefits. Let's give them stock options. Right? These aren't things that these guys have. So that's what you got to consider when you think about this.
So was I correct that you have not discussed this with your officers and your firefighters and your union reps?
Oh, there's been a lot of discussion, and that's why some of the guys are here, and they're very concerned about this.
This has been in the public domain here at Township Hall. It's been in the agenda now since Friday morning. The chiefs have seen this. They've asked me questions. I mean, okay.
How many?
Well, 2 years ago it was brought up and we tabled it then. So it's not new news.
Mark, how many of the 22 plus potentially 50-some are not public safety?
Don't know off the top of my head, but it's a very small percentage. Very small.
Part of that is because those who are the salaried non-public safety, they must work until their 60s in order to get a township benefit for health insurance.
Right, and
whereas the bargaining units, police and fire, they can work till they could retire as early as 48 or even earlier.
Right.
Remember, there's an article in The Rock about somebody from Canton Township who retired at 43 or 42 from Canton Township and now is working at the school district as the director. He's got a letter in here for us, to you, on vaccinations. Matthias or somebody? That's a good example. What is it? Whatever his name, whoever the head is at the school district, security. He sent it's in our packet. So, okay, 42-year-old retiree. All right, so.
Canton does offer early outs, I believe, too, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're very generous with early outs, and they've had to pay dearly for that. Any questions or comments from the public on this item? Yes, you gotta come up. You gotta come up. You gotta come up here, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Matar, or Matar? Thank you.
Tell us what city you live in, or township.
I live in Plymouth Township. I previously lived in another community. My husband is a firefighter, not with this community. My husband has put his life at risk through the whole COVID ordeal. And the compensation that firefighters receive, their pension is part of their compensation package. And I'm an economist by training, so I just want to say that as a wife of a firefighter who has a business background and, has a, background in economics, he puts his life at risk. He has put his life on risk in the past year. And, his benefits package is part of his compensation package. So I want to say that. And as a person who chooses a community that I want to live in, things like this are important to me, that I feel like I'm in a community that values the, first responders and police officers that put their lives on the line.
So a couple of responses. One, Plymouth Township has the wisdom of a private ambulance service, so we protected our firemen from having to do a lot of calls during COVID, and they were available for fire service. So we transport typically privately. So that was a provision because of our vision of 30 years ago, to have a private ambulance. And second, I like your idea about total compensation. Maybe it's time to publish, like we used to, the total compensation for our employees, not by name, but by function. We did that. So that's a good idea.
So just to reiterate, having a private, as a citizen, having the community call on your citizens is usually a better value package, because different ambulance services have been very stressed for their ability to respond. So if you have your community that does the direct responding, that typically, you may pay a little bit more for it, but then you're more likely to be transported.
That's a good idea. We have both that respond, the private ambulance and the fire department here.
No, I mean, your ambulance service is the one that's doing the transport and responding. It's different.
We, here in Plymouth Township, the township firemen report to a medical emergency and Huron Valley, both. And the transport is an option based on the site commander's decision on scene of who transports, but the default is Huron Valley. And during COVID, they did 90% of the transports. So your ideas are great, good.
No, but I do know that during COVID, Huron Valley was very stretched for resources. Yeah. I know that for a fact specifically.
But our fire chief told us we were covered. Things were done well. We only had 1/3 the normal calls. So we were able to cover it. 1/3 our normal calls during the peak of COVID.
I'm just saying, as a community person living in this community, that's important to me.
Great, well, good to know. I agree. It is important to us too.
So 2 quick comments. Firefighters, they're not all men. And second, is that it's a total digression, but I felt that way for years. We used to publish the total compensation package because people I think they have a right to know it's public money.
Chief, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to make a correction. HVA did not transport 90% of the calls.
What was it?
It was lower than, we were, one of our highest years were about 30%. So they were about 70% of our patients.
Some months they were 80 during COVID. They were high. Anyway, whatever. It was a lot. Majority was Huron Valley.
Actually, per their numbers that they supplied us, they were lower for most of COVID because their resources were stretched pretty far. And because they did have staff that was down with COVID as well.
But your vision, our vision worked and covered the people.
Yes, our staff was well protected the entire time, and our staff was here to protect our citizens.
And fight fires.
Yes, which we had more fires this year than in previous years. And we did more transports than in previous years. So the fire department actually did a lot more during COVID than in previous years.
We got to check that. Calls for service were way down in this time last year. But anyway, go ahead. We'll go look at the data.
Okay. Yes, sir.
My name's Chuck Hamilton. I'm a resident of Plymouth Township and have been
You can take the mask off if you wish. It's okay. We're not.
My name's Chuck Hamilton. I'm a resident of Plymouth Township and have lived in town for 40 plus years. Mine's more of a comment. While I understand healthcare is an issue for employers across the board everywhere, what got me upset was when I heard Audrey, is it Audrey or Audra?
It's Audrey Monahan.
Make a comment about a promise is a promise, but, well, that implies that your word is no good. And we have the finest fire department and police department going out
The
there.
two are not mutually exclusive, sir, and I resent that comment because you didn't hear it correctly.
Well, that's
The members of the board had suggested that promise made, promise kept. Okay, we're up here having a discussion. It doesn't mean I'm voting yes or no. You have no idea what I'm voting.
No,
So-
I'm not saying that you're voting one way or the other.
So you can take exception all you want. Okay, but at the end of the day, I'm entitled to my opinion just as you are.
You are. I'm just saying that we got the finest department.
We have a wonderful department.
But it was
This discussion is up here for us.
packages.
Yes, but the discussion here, and you can pick just on me, I don't really care, I'm a big girl. But at the end of the day, all of us had the same type of discussion about what's best for this community, our firefighters, and our police. Do you think I'm up here just to sit up here and just hear myself speak? We're here trying to make real decisions. Does that matter to you?
It does matter to
Great.
me. That's why I'm here.
Thank you.
So furthering my comment is that I would really love to support whatever the fire and police department want out of this. I do understand that it's a cost factor and that taxpayers, which I am one of them, will end up probably having to pay for it. But we experience the same thing in our own lives, so we understand that we'll probably have to pay for the fire department and the police department increased health care. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else on this particular item? All righty, thank you very much. We're going to move on to item F3, and before we get into that discussion, I just want to compliment the board for a very professional and thorough debate and discussion on the previous item, and I hope that we will continue that theme throughout the current one as well. The legislative process is one that is often messy. It's been referred to as the sausage factory. We have three former legislators here. You chaired a committee, right, John?
I chaired judiciary and higher education.
You chaired judiciary as well?
I chaired judiciary in 2002,
Okay.
and you sent me some.
No, I just asked you a simple question.
legislation that
No, I
was
just asked you,
passed.
darn it, just ask you a simple question. So you chaired judiciary and higher ed.
Yeah.
Jerry never chaired. Did you chair anything?
No, I was just
All
co-chair of
right.
senior citizen.
I was vice chair of judiciary and I chaired criminal justice. And so the legislative process is what we're watching tonight, okay? This is basically a study session. We're not voting on anything, but you have to advance you have to have something on the table to talk about, and that's the important thing. So the problem that, the issue presented, the challenge presented to Plymouth Township tonight is, this is our tree ordinance as it exists right now. We already have one. It's based on Public Act 359 of 1947. I didn't know that. It is about 2.5 pages long. It really doesn't tell you a whole lot. It basically just tells you, be nice to trees, make sure you plant them properly. There's an appeal of some sort, and there's about 5 or 6 different trees that you're not supposed to plant. And that does include willow trees. So, and I can tell you, we as a policy of the township, again, it's an unwritten policy. And there's a lot of unwritten policies that we have with respect to trees. And Laura Hall will talk about that a little bit later. But I don't want to digress into the willow tree issue, but as I think as Bob knows, in your neighborhood, willow trees are prominent, and they've infiltrated the storm sewer lines. And so we've had a prohibition on those for quite a while. But, so hold on. So what we've got here right now is an ordinance on the books that really has a lot of holes in it. And it makes it a challenge for Laura to enforce when businesses come before her, like Wabasto, like Margate, the development that we voted on a couple weeks ago, because there's this obvious tension between the development and the trees. We really need more guidance in this in a new ordinance. What I've done, and I guess what has triggered a few people on social media, is that I'm using the Plymouth tree ordinance as a starting off point. Okay?
City of Plymouth.
The city of Plymouth. What did I say?
You said Plymouth, but.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Somebody
So
may be confused.
I just throw it out there as I always call them Plymouth. So I'm throwing this out there because it was a heavily vetted ordinance. It went through several different iterations at the city level from very passionate people, and there's a lot of passionate folks in the city when it comes to trees, and they've certainly had their issues with Bigfoot homes and all of that, new development. This was actually the second ordinance that they ended up adopting, and it was voted on. I just Googled it and went through the old news stories, and it was approved by a 5-2 vote. So it wasn't even unanimous in the city when it was adopted. But I'm putting it out there to show what is probably the most, I don't know, restrictive, depending on your point of view, or the most detailed, depending on your point of view, ordinance that is out there that is from a comparable community that is that has also gone through a very thorough vetting process. One of the bonuses of a tree ordinance of any sort, probably not the one that we have now, is that would also allow us to achieve the Tree City USA designation. And it's a nice thing to have. And we're going to go through some slides to show why trees are nice, and having this designation is a nice thing to have. It makes your community look good. It shows that you care about the environment. It shows that you care about the quality of life that trees provide a community. And the other thing is, we kind of deserve it, that mention, because we're already complying with all of the requirements of the Tree City USA format as determined by the National Arbor Day Association. We're already planting trees. We're already spending money every year on new trees. We spend money and time on maintaining the trees that are in our domain. We've set aside public lands for parks. So we really deserve the credit for doing that. So the ordinance before you, the draft ordinance, does come from the city of Plymouth. It's been codified in such a way that it looks like a Plymouth Township ordinance, and Kevin and I worked on that. The other thing is too, as much as I like Kevin Bennett and respect his work, with all due respect, Counselor, I don't want to have to pay you $3,000 to start from scratch and draft a brand new ordinance. I'd rather take one. I've drafted several ordinances in my life, and I'd rather just take an ordinance from another community and start using that as a starting point. And so this represents, I would say, on the level of intensity of 1 to 10, 10 being the most intense and possibly intrusive, I would say this is a 10, okay? And it's been vetted heavily by the city of Plymouth, and we don't always agree with the city on everything. Another thing I just want to address, and we can go through this ordinance and we can ask some questions of each other in a professional manner, is I'm concerned about the trend that I think many of us have seen in the township, where people are coming, they will buy a parcel for their own use, and they clear cut it. They just clear cut the entire lot to build a house or to build a residence of some sort. I want to find, I think it's good public policy to find a way to work with those individuals to say, hey, these are heritage trees. You may have a 200-year-old tree there. You may have something that's been around since, the Native Americans were walking these parts. Is it really necessary to take that tree down? Can we find a way to incorporate that into your design? At the end of the day, if they don't, they still have the right to take that tree down. There's no permit, there's no way for us to stop that from happening. But if it does happen, then we have a tree fund, which we already have. We've already created a tree fund, and this would codify that. Or you would have to plant a suitable amount of replacement trees under the city's ordinance. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'm happy if you want to go through page by page. I don't know if that's necessary. We still have a closed session tonight. And I can really quickly go through the slideshow on the Arbor Day thing. A lot of it's kind of rudimentary, elementary, but I'd be happy to do that as well. Bob?
Yeah, I'll make a few comments. So first, I appreciate those comments because I know, I understood that you put that out there as a straw man, but I think it kind of just got misinterpreted a little bit. But, I'm sorry, did you have a comment?
Okay.
Where this discussion started, in part, was in the Planning Commission some time ago, which was probably at least a year or so. And it was not intended, our discussion was not intended to be targeted at residential properties, but rather it was for the scenarios that you described, either somebody clear cut, and we had a rogue developer who essentially thumbed their nose at the township and clear cut everything, and there was nothing we could do about it. And so,
You're talking about the property behind Home Depot?
yes.
Well, we did actually. I mean, he was forced to put money into the tree fund.
Yeah, but it
He
was
did that
after the fact.
maliciously.
Yeah.
And his representative has been here a couple of times dealing with us.
So, without getting into that in detail, so I totally appreciate the sentiment. I would not vote for it in this form.
No, nor would I.
Nor would you. So we got to do some work to do, and I think it's also, when you look at where it was drafted, particularly in a community like the city of Plymouth, part of the intent is to preserve the canopy over the streets and the charm. I mean, the Grosse Points are like that, and the charm, but we have less of that issue, and we've gotten a blow.
You're saying we have less charm?
We have plenty of charm.
I got charm. The rest of you got problems.
But Bob, so let me just explore that a little bit.
Yeah.
I know, and you're on the Planning Commission, and you're our delegate to the Planning Commission. I know this is where this issue has come up, especially with anything that would be commercial related. And unfortunately, we've had to address those on a case-by-case basis. Laura has, and the Planning Commission has. So basically, what we have to do is play let's make a deal every time that happens. And I know Laura and the Planning Commission and the Building Department would love to have some structure rather than a 2.5-page ordinance that's based on something that's 80 years old. So,
can you help me out with that?
Yeah.
My understanding was that in our ordinance and policies for Planning Commission, as long as I can remember, when you're going to develop property, you have to do a tree survey, which measures the size and identifies the variety of every tree, and it's a negotiated thing, and if you can't plant them all to substitute, then you have we've had a tree fund for a long time. It just didn't get invented the last 4 years. So, are we confusing, am I confused, or are we confusing people the difference between new development of a residential subdivision or a commercial property versus my house that's been around since 1976? So
Are we confusing them?
Pardon?
Is that what's your question?
I think this is confusing, the way that it's written in the ordinance.
Yes.
But help me out. Laura Haw, is there something, a mechanism already in the planning commission that I've seen in effect, or is it totally informal?
Evening, trustees. The zoning ordinance, the adopted zoning ordinance of the township does have a landscape article. However, the language in there has almost no teeth to it. By law, the township can only require a quarter of what is removed that is over 8 inches to be replaced. That pales in comparison to most communities.
So why wouldn't we change that in the zoning ordinance, modify it there instead of spreading it to my residential neighborhood?
Well, you don't have to, it's all discussion.
Right, but I know, that's why we're discussing it.
Yeah.
So let me take that up, because if you are, first of all, I'm not in favor of a permit to take down a dead or diseased tree on your property. I'm not in favor of a permit.
The city of Plymouth doing that?
Yeah, under this current
Okay.
ordinance, yeah. I'm not in favor of a permit to have to chop a limb off your tree, or the lady with the deer, eating it, or anything like that. What concerns me, and I don't know if I know the answer yet, and what concerns me is I'm concerned about, and I've seen this in other communities, where in a residential setting, Chuck, your neighbor, you're a good steward of the environment. Your neighbor, though, may sell his house. The new person comes in and says, I think trees are messy. I don't like them. They're too much hassle. And they clear cut everything.
On their own property?
Yeah, yeah. So what's happening right now?
If they have a swimming pool and they don't want the cooties in there.
So what's happening right now in the city and in many other cities, I mean, the dirty secret is that ordinances, we just kind of steal from each other over various millennia. But what's the answer then for somebody who says, I want to come into your neighborhood, Chuck, and buy a house, clear cut everything, and where's the value added to the community, to your property values? Is there a way for us for Laura, for an arborist, because this ordinance in particular requires that an arborist would have to visit the site and try to work with the homeowner on a way to resolve the issue. If that's too intrusive, okay, but the opposite is a clear cut, which I think also diminishes property values, quality of life, and a variety of things.
So Kurt,
Yeah.
I'd like to respond to that one. First of all, I want to say, Donna, kudos for taking care of your property that way. Thank you for doing that. I don't know how you did it with a broken hip. But at the end of the day, I think that our citizens, I would like to know, for the people that are buying these houses, who really goes and clear cuts their property, because one of the reasons that I came to this community was because it did remind me of Grosse Pointe, the beautiful trees and the maturity of the neighborhoods. And I think that the last thing I think, and then Kurt, if I hear you right, the last thing I think we want is to have permits put on our residents to cut down their own trees, that this ordinance is something that is probably a little bit more restrictive than we would ever want. So I think we need to just deal with the commercial reality of it in the commercial sense for the builders and leave the private citizens alone.
And I would agree with that, but the city of Plymouth, this is really their ordinance. It is extremely confusing. I don't know how a homeowner could sort through what his actions are without reading it many times.
And it does it contradicts itself.
It's not in bullet point format. It doesn't give you a procedure. And they think this is good. I don't know.
No.
So I agree. And if I'd rather, if my neighbor does something that stupid, I guess I have to live with it because I'd rather have my personal freedoms. I don't want if they want to diminish their property, or don't know what they're doing, I would love to talk to them, but it's, in the end, it's their responsibility, their value proposition. I don't want to give up my personal judgment to be able to adjust the trees on my property at will without the building department manager managing me and with their handout for a fee. I've planted over 3,000 trees in my life. I love trees. I'm a person that can identify a tree at 100 feet. So that doesn't mean, though, I want to have this kind of an ordinance. And I planted trees that are on my curb, 1/4 inch. Now they're huge. Tells you how old I am.
What about the provisions, though, about trees that cannot, or should not be planted?
Oh, I agree with those, as long as they're the right ones. And the city of Plymouth has made a lot of errors. I don't know, what is the title on page 2 really supposed to be? Common name, and then what is the title? Are these trees that are allowed?
These are the ones that are defined as heritage
Heritage
trees.
trees.
Okay.
above, yeah.
For example, if they had an arborist, I'm surprised they would pick black elder. That is an invasive species of garbage. Locust, black locust is another tree, which oddly enough, that's the tree that was on almost 100% of Wabasto, cut down black locust, which is a spindly tree, great firewood, probably the best you can get, great fence posts, and great windbreaks. And they're considered invasive any place north of Bay City, or really north of here almost. And they're cutting them out, for example, in the Sleeping Bear Dunes. They're hiring loggers to cut out all black locust and burn it or sell it to someone who wants it.
Okay.
So I don't think this list is very good in some cases. But I think, Chinese elm, like I wrote there, should be eliminated, should be deleted as an allowed tree.
What I also like here is for the, an update on the distances from street corners, driveways, curbs, et cetera, that's good. Distance from utility signs and hydrants, that's okay. And again, it depends on what type of tree you're planting. Distance, I think somebody had a concern about that, so, good to note.
But that applies to my private residence too?
What happens, these trees that are prohibited trees, and you use the example of willows?
Yeah.
When they were planted, I know of a few that were planted, and there was an ordinance at the time, and just nobody did anything about it. They were planted as small trees, so they break up the sewer. Whose responsibility is that?
Well, when we've had this ongoing issue in Country Club Village, because there's a lot of willow trees there.
Are there a
So
lot?
what we did is, back in 2017 or 18, we worked with the HOA, and we should have put that on our GIS map, actually, but we basically did a map.
Of them.
We worked with the HOA to map out every single willow tree, because the idea was, if that tree was damaged in a storm or got diseased in some way, if it was on common property of the HOA, we were telling them, you have to take it down. We wanted them to take all of them down, actually, because they were busting up the storm drains.
Well, the storm drain, we finally fixed our agreement. In the end, is the homeowners association responsibility. We'll fix it, but you get billed back.
No, what if there's so I plant a willow, and I have a storm drain running through my property and my neighbor, and it goes all the way down the street. I'm just making up a hypothetical. And willows, I understand willow roots can be found up to a mile away. So it breaks up the storm sewer 3 houses down. Who's responsible for that?
Homeowners.
Call a lawyer.
That's the homeowners association owns.
Well, not all of them. I mean, in Bob's neighborhood, there are some willows on private property too, sure.
No, but I'm talking about this, you're talking about the sewer fix.
I'm talking about storm sewers on private property, not on the parcel where the tree is. It's on your neighbors.
No, that's the HOA would pay and it becomes everybody in the end.
Does it? Okay.
That's what happened over here with this cave-in, for example, because we had a hole in our transfer of responsibility ordinance, remember that?
Yeah, but that wasn't tree related.
No, but it was a failure of the storm sewer.
Yeah.
And so a tree caused the failure, say, right?
Well, in Bob's hypothetical, yeah.
Yeah. So the HOA would be paying for it. Maybe we would supervise the fixing and front the money, but in the end, you'd be paying it back to Mark Clinton as a treasurer from your HOA.
So a couple other things that I do like here, the role of the county. This is something that we had to pretty much rewrite because as a township, we're not responsible for the trees that are in the easements. And it
appears the county isn't either. They're letting them
well,
run
that's
wild.
well, we have to badger them in order to remove dead or diseased trees. But the rule is that if you want to plant a tree in the easement, you have to get permission from the county. We don't have that's just a rule. That's not written anywhere that I'm aware of. So it'd be nice to codify that. Is that a fair statement, Laura?
Well, definitely to take one down. I've seen people cut them down and a perfectly good tree because they didn't like it. That's where I would think there needs to be some control, cutting down other people's trees.
Well, on public property.
On
or
public
on
property.
an easement, yeah, absolutely.
But there are some, I mean, there's some, when you read some of the language here, I mean, there's some due process issues that are kind of.
In this ordinance now?
Yeah. You know,
For
where-
example, help me out.
Well, I mean, like tree care. If any
What
owner.
page is that on?
Page 5, if any owner, occupant, or person having charge of any land within the township shall refuse or neglect to resolve public safety issues caused by private trees as provided in this chapter, then a township supervisor or his designee shall cause the land to be entered upon by the township employee or the township contractor. You can't, I mean, there's no due process. I mean, it's just like, oh, you didn't do what I want you to do, now I'm gonna do this. I mean, there's gotta be a process.
Some cities do that. They just go
I
do it.
understand that, but I don't like non-due process.
Well,
Well, we would take this out because we're not gonna be doing residential tree care.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm just bringing it up.
Yeah.
It's just that inside there's some due process issues. And sometimes it says to remove or cause to remove any tree or part thereof which is unsafe condition or which by reason of its nature is injurious to sewers. I said, even on county or state land?
I'm sorry, Jerry, what section?
That was tree care.
What's the number?
Page 5,
Page 5.
59 of 101.
Yeah,
You put it up
B.
there.
You know, so I'm going, I mean, it just says
59.
that.
No, and you're right, but let me just, so this is our current ordinance.
Yeah.
So, for example, the first page of our current ordinance under the title Undesirable Trees. The following trees constitute a public and private nuisance and constitute a hazard to life and property. That's one example. Secondly.
Catalpa is spelled wrong, and that isn't on any of the city of Plymouth lists.
Okay, so for example, here, clearance. Oh, I just saw it, darn it.
I'm sorry, I
Page
lost, I
2.
lost the spot. I
Page 2.
want to bring this up for the public. Where you at?
Yeah, well, this is, no, I'm on the township's current
On the
ordinance.
township's
That's-
current
That's not
ordinance.
in there.
Jerry was talking about page 59.
So here's,
Bob.
Yeah.
okay, so here's the second page under clearance of the current ordinance. The township shall have the right to trim any tree or shrub on private property when it interferes with visibility of any traffic control device or sign. There's even a different one.
You're on
Yeah, current ordinance. The note.
item
there's
11-29,
There's
page.
another one about corner clearance. Upon expiration, the building official may cause the trimming to be done. The cost thereof may be collected from the owner as an assessment as determined by the township board for corner clearance. So there's already in our, and I'm not saying I agree with it or that it's a good thing, but we've already got some rather invasive language to allow the township to enter property and trim trees and do things like that. So, you know, that's just another reason why we need to update this thing. And this has been Laura, I mean, this has been on the, certainly on your wish list and the building department. And I don't know about the planning commission, I don't want to speak for them, but Dennis left. But, I mean, this has been something that you guys have been looking for a while, and I'd be happy to work with you more on taking this ordinance, or if we have to go to another community that you would want to recommend, maybe that you've had some experience with, so that we can, you know, make the necessary. Yeah, Canton, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure about that.
Canton got themselves into a pickle with a guy who was looking for a fight, and he got it, and apparently he was willing to hire lawyers to help him out. John Stewart.
Let's begin with the end in mind. Although I might be more conservative than Trustee Kermey and you, Supervisor Heisey, the Dutch rule is if it's not necessary, then it's necessary not to do it. But apparently you have put before us that there is a need to update this very more than a half-century old ordinance on trees. And by the way, on a lighter note, Chuck, or if you or anybody else is cutting down a black walnut, please call me. I'll be there with the trailer. If you understand the value and beauty of black walnut, Granville City, Mayor Steve Moss, population 30,000, located in the most conservative voting county in Michigan, Ottawa County, 30,000 residents with a Costco. They have had an umbrella of different committees. I dare say with some, well, she's one of a kind in Michigan, but with some sub-chairs like a Marianne McLaren. They have had an umbrella task force, which I'm hoping you will implement, Mr. Supervisor, a task force to come back to us and look at Granville's tree designation, which just occurred a couple months ago. Now, the mayor will be willing to come here. He is a 63-year-old lawyer and marathoner like myself, Steve Moss. Mayor Moss will face this community and answer their questions. He's Dutch, double A, M-A-A-S. And I strongly recommend that as a template. Coming from the most conservative county in the state of Michigan, Granville is now a tree city. But let's not doubt the Dutch to be picayune from A to Z and preserve their individual liberty and property rights, even for Mr. Zantop and the others, because there was well, I won't digress. There was quite a volatile reaction to your initial proposal, and you know, I think we should pay Kevin Bennett, Township Attorney, and I think we should pay McKenna to do a thorough task force and to look at a template like Granville. So I won't repeat myself because my mother taught me that a word to the wise is
Could I just
sufficient.
make a
Thank you
comment
very
real
much.
quick?
Yeah.
Mr. Zantop, for what you were referencing, he didn't write that.
No, I'm saying
courier
each and every
statement.
person's individual right. Please understand me.
Okay,
Each and every person's
wanna make
individual
sure.
rights on a tree. I love black walnut, but I've taken them down with my father.
Okay, so we're getting a little off track.
Well, no, we need a task force.
Yeah, well, I'm
An
not.
umbrella and subcommittees and a report in 3 months.
I mean, to be honest, I've written I've lost count how many ordinances I've written throughout my life. So what I like to do is I like to take one that we can take and pick apart and revise, so that I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. I have eminent respect for Kevin Bennett. I just don't want to have to pay him to reinvent the wheel. And I'm trying to save a few bucks here.
Right,
Okay,
so my
thank you.
guess is that Laura Haw, who is intellectually honest in her professional dealings, will look at the Granville tree ordinance and have a discussion with the supervisor. That's all I wanted to have.
That's not a task.
That's all I want to know.
No, and what I would like to do is come back at a later point And, I mean, I've gotten a lot of feedback from the board, not only tonight, but many of you have emailed me with good questions. Chuck, you gave me some good questions the other day, and I appreciate that. You know, I think most of the public comments and concerns have been very helpful. I really think that in many respects, the Plymouth City ordinance is very restrictive in certain ways, and in certain ways, there's some good points. I just want to come back, because the thing that's always going to stick in my craw right now is, what do we do about, and I think Chuck raises some good points about private property rights, but we also have,
That's a given.
but we also have I'm looking at the diminution of property values. I'm looking at the diminution of historic trees. My own house is a good example. I have a house behind me. It's a historic house. It's on McClumpha. You guys have driven by it a million times. There's probably a tree there we've estimated, and we've had people come out in the neighborhood. It's probably 200, 250 years old.
It's a black walnut.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's
Serious?
Don't
Yes,
take it
it
down.
is.
Don't take it down. I mean, Native Americans camped out underneath that tree. You know, I think that's cool, and I think it contributes to the.
How do you know that?
Well, I like to think so, right?
Good
I mean,
story.
I can dream.
Jerry told him.
I can dream. Jerry told me. Jerry had them. Yeah, never mind. But that's the tension that exists, and I think that you want to have an appealing, welcoming community that is attractive, that has attributes, and I think that's a strong attribute of a good community to live in. And in any respect, we still have to update this ordinance, because I know for a fact it's not working up. It's an 80-year-old ordinance that's got to get updated, and I think we can all agree on that.
Don't we need to clarify? I think the Tree City requires this kind of restrictive, all-inclusive ordinance allegedly.
No, it really does not.
I thought that's what I was told.
No, it's actually not. They actually have a draft ordinance.
It says in here, this is the last, wait a minute.
No, an ordinance.
It says in here, this is the last point to become Tree City.
Yeah.
The ordinance would also allow us to formally create the township's tree fund, better regulate trees.
A ordinance, not this one.
Oh, so the ordinance we have could technically qualify to be Tree City?
I doubt it. I think it's so vague and outdated. I wouldn't want to submit that as our ordinance. I think we have to have an updated ordinance.
But this is why I was confused. Adoption of this ordinance would also be the last remaining requirement for the township to obtain Tree City status by National Arbor Day Foundation.
Right.
So what is the truth? Do we need this?
No, not this restrictive, just that's another element that needs to happen, is an updated.
So the right word should be a ordinance, not this ordinance?
An updated ordinance, right. Not
Laura, do you agree with that? Do we need to have, what is the requirement?
It's grammatically incorrect, isn't it?
For Arbor Day? And this also was an objective of the Environmental Commission to be Tree City, so I'm getting confused as to, do we need a restrictive ordinance, or does just a ordinance, which we already have, work?
It has to be, preferably, I would say, and Laura, you can correct me, but it can be less restrictive than what Plymouth City has done, but I think it has to be more detailed and more updated than what we currently have.
Correct, and I would state that there are inconsistencies right now in that 2.5 page versus the zoning ordinance that need to be rectified. It's just not accurate.
We're over 2 hours into the meeting, and you had promised me a break.
Oh,
Okay, let's do it.
Can we finish this up first, and then we'll go into
How
closed
long is
session?
the slideshow?
Let's do the break.
I
do the
don't
break?
know.
Right,
I
we can
don't
do a break.
necessarily need to see the slideshow unless you guys want to.
The slideshow is really there for your, it's basically trees are great and they're wonderful and they solve,
Dendrophilia.
and they solve all the ills of society and everything. But I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. I just put
So
that in.
let's talk about next steps.
So the one thing I want to look at, Laura, can you find the slide or Bob, can you find the slide that talks about what is necessary to achieve?
I think people are going to want to talk, so I think you want to take your break.
Okay, well,
Especially if you have to potty.
just hold on, guys.
Yeah, Chuck, there's a urologist in my family. you know, as well as an OBGYN.
All right, keep going, Bob, keep going. What we'll do, everybody, Bob is gonna find that slide, and we'll just, we can take a 5-minute recess, okay?
Okay.
There you go. So we'll keep, for the folks running the television thing, if there's a way for us to,
I don't know if there is.
I don't think there is. So what we do is we'll turn our mics off.
Mic's off.
Where's, are we back on?
Stuart.
Okay, okay. Let's go. Okay, so I asked Bob to go to the standards for the Tree City thing, and this is the 4 things that you have to do. You have to have a tree board or department. In our case, it would be the Environmental Leadership Commission. In Plymouth City, it's just the DPW, which is kind of weak. You have to have a tree care ordinance, which this would be part of. A forestry program with annual budget of at least $2 per capita. We are already at that point and doing way more, actually, when you look at what we spend every year on tree maintenance.
Seriously, 50,000, we spend that much on trees?
Yeah, absolutely. On the tree planting program and on all the work that we do in the parks, yeah. You get credit for all that.
Well, tree planting, would you be willing to give us a list of the names and addresses of who got the free trees this year?
Why should I do that?
Well, no,
I mean, I can't get the addresses of people who speak in front of us, but now you want this? That's pretty intrusive. Gosh.
Well, we gave something free away, so I'd like to see who got it.
Well, okay. I don't know if that even exists. And then you have to do an Arbor Day observance proclamation. That's easy. Next slide, please. Standards, this is what the tree board would have to do. This would be the Environmental Leadership Commission. They're already doing this, so that's cool. Continue, Bob. Tree care ordinance establishes the tree board guidance. That's all what we talked about here tonight. And they even, well, their draft ordinance is actually not as bad as Plymouth's. The standards, we talked about this. So this is what all goes to your $2 per capita. Cities' salaries, planting, watering, fertilizing, that we're doing right now. Equipment rental, we just bought a new wood chipper, so that would count. We're doing all of this and even more when you factor in what we do every day at parks and even Laura's time. Continue, next slide. And then you have to do an Arbor Day observance, that's fun. And then next, I think that's all they require. And you have to meet the 4 standards. You have to apply before the end of the calendar year, and you can go online to see what else is out there. It's simple, and it's a feather in our cap to show that we are good stewards of the environment and that we value the trees that are in our community.
I think that's simple. It looks like adding more work for our employees.
We're already doing it. So, okay. Does anybody want to comment? I mean, I know we had some comments at the beginning. I don't want to deter people from commenting. This gentleman up here.
One quick comment.
You got to come up to the front, sorry.
You compare the township to the city of Plymouth. I'll repeat that in case the red light wasn't on. You compare the township to the city of Plymouth. Generally the township, we have much larger lots than the city of Plymouth. Over the years, I alluded to, I've been in my house 24 years. I've cut down 13 trees and I've planted 34 trees, and there's not many lots in the city of Plymouth that allows for that kind of movement of trees. So I think the size of the lots is an important consideration and an important difference.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Oh.
Ron Hope, you'll know where I live shortly. First of all, why would you use the city of Plymouth as a reference?
Well, as I stated.
Let me finish.
Okay. I mean, are we having?
This egregious ordinance that they have has upset a lot of people. And if this was literature, it would be plagiarism. I mean, it's really remiss on the part of whoever offered this to come up with this thing. And also, it is easy to misunderstand that the Tree City designation, it appeared that it required all of these things. It didn't say an ordinance, it said this ordinance.
It does not say that
it upset
anywhere,
a lot of people. A lot of people are here because of that. They've spent 2 or 3 hours of their time, perhaps needlessly, to do that.
Not at all.
Because it appears and was and is the insidious creep of government intervention in citizens' lives.
Okay.
And it's almost like a practical joke on the people that came here this evening. Now, looking at the slides, does it say anything about regulations on private property? I didn't see that.
No, it doesn't.
For the Tree City
Not in those,
designation.
not in those slides, it does not.
So what was it, just kind of a straw man to throw up and then back off
Well,
and say, okay, well, we're not gonna
You were here at my opening remarks, and what I said is I don't want to reinvent the wheel, and I wanted to take an ordinance that has been heavily vetted for many years from a comparable community. That's all.
Comparable, it isn't.
It's a template.
It isn't.
That's how laws are written.
Why pick that as a template? How many other cities did you look at?
I looked at a few, but I wanted
Which
one that I
ones?
know, it's none of your business. So
Okay.
how's that?
Let me
I mean,
ask you
you're gonna
another
be
question
argumentative
about the
with me.
people that
I'm
come
gonna
in
throw
and
it back at
clear-cut property.
What?
About the people that clear-cut property that you use as a reference.
I'm concerned about that, yeah.
Of course. When has that ever happened in Plymouth Township on private property?
It's happening right now. It's happening on North Territorial. It's happening in other parts of the township.
Development or an individual
An
homeowner?
individual, an individual, yeah.
Okay.
And it happens in other communities too. I've
Well,
seen
it kind of
firsthand.
reminds me of 2 years ago when people were dying in the streets and the houses were burning down because we didn't have Fire Station 2. And I was
Really?
promised
What does that
by
have to
the-
do with anything?
And I was promised by the, well, that was the emotional appeal. I was promised
Okay.
by the new
Okay.
economic coordinator that we would have the metrics on the improvement of response times
whatever.
and everything. Never happened.
All right, well, you can close Fire Station 2 when you get a
Okay.
chance.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
anyway,
who's next? Seriously.
Thanks for your
It's
time.
argumentative and unnecessary. Well, this lady's been waiting. Mr. Zantop, this lady's been waiting patiently.
No, go ahead. I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
I'm very patient.
I didn't mean to cut in front of you. Well, couple things.
Leaning against the wall.
One thing I can go along with is trees along the corners, because I almost got killed. I'm sure a lot of you know that. I had life-threatening injuries about a year and a half ago on the corner of Beacon Hill Drive and Ann Arbor Trail. And those trees are still there. They're bushes. There's bushes. They're not a lot big trees, but there's been a lot of accidents on that corner. I
They're
can go
tree of
along-
heaven, you know that?
Pardon?
Most of them are tree of heaven.
Tree of heaven.
Ailanthus.
They need to be cleaned out of there. I could go along with something like that on the corners and things. But I am just bitterly opposed to this tree ordinance. I just don't think it's an invasion of our private property rights, and I really don't, there's no way I want to see this. I could care less about a tree city. I don't cut trees down for just the hell of it. I planted trees, a lot of them, in my lifetime, but I don't need everybody telling me what to do in my own personal property. And there's some other things I'll save for public comments at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I know it's late, so I'm going to be really short. Number one, there's a tree right next to my beautiful landscaped acre that I have called Wayne County to take down. I got a picture of it. It's between the driveway and Ann Arbor Trail. I've called them for 4 years. This tree loses limbs. This tree loses everything. And I cannot get them to take it down.
Okay.
What kind is it?
I don't know, but I'm sure you're pretty
Chuck
good at
probably
trees.
knows.
You'll be able to.
Maybe I'll visit.
Chuck, get out there and take a look. I think I can
I'll
see it.
put my hand on it.
Oh, boy, you're gonna communicate with it.
Pass it down.
Turn around, which one?
Oh,
sound like Sunday
which
morning
one?
TV.
It's.
Put your hand on the television.
Okay,
Can you
let's
do
see.
can you do a street view, Bob?
Yeah,
So Ann Arbor Trail.
So here's what we
Okay,
need.
it's right, where is my house? Let me
I don't
see,
know.
Right over here. See this tree right there?
You can see
I'm
it.
not talking in the mic. Go back. Right there at the bottom. You can't, right there, you
There,
got it.
hit it.
Right there. You can't see it because there's no leaves.
Yeah,
on it.
it's dead. I can see it.
Is it on the south side of the sidewalk?
Google Earth
the north
on
side.
with
It
this
is
browser keeps
between
doing
the
this.
sidewalk and Ann Arbor Trail, right next to.
So that's the south side of the sidewalk.
Yeah, I
like the
can't get
north
him to
side.
cut it down. I'm ready to go out there with my little chainsaw and take it down,
No,
but I'm
don't.
sure I'll get arrested.
Don't do that.
So somebody please get that little tree down.
So here's what I need you to do. Tomorrow morning,
Yes.
email us, okay?
All right.
Take my card, or just, you know how to get a hold of Sue. You
Yes.
talked with Sue today. Email us, and what we'll do is we'll get you in touch with the county. The county forestry division is responsible for removing those dead and diseased trees. I literally think it's 2 men in a truck, and they have the whole county that they have to deal
Are
with.
they on Ann Arbor Trail and Merriman Road?
In Livonia, is that where they're the Wayne County Forestry has,
Right,
locations.
there's one right
Yeah.
there because I delivered them Subways one town to get them to cut down a tree that I said, you need to cut, and they had it out. I paid for lunch and everything to get that tree
I
cut
don't know.
down. And then we just simply planted a nice little tree. But I cannot get them to
Okay,
cut this one
please
down.
let us know. We communicate with Commissioner Daub every month.
I appreciate that.
We email her, we hound her, and she does a good job to try to get the DPS, the Wayne County DPS people out to remove trees.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then the other thing is, I've listened to everybody talk, and I think we need to look at the direction you're going. I'd be willing to volunteer, because, I mean, I love my property, and I'd be willing to volunteer to come down there, meet with anybody. But I just think we're getting into the right area of what we're looking for, and we really need to critique this down to what we really, really want. We don't need to take a book of somebody else's stuff or look at what Arbor Day wants. We can have Plymouth Day, who cares? Plymouth's Tree Day. But I think by listening to all of you, I think we're in the right direction.
Okay.
And I'm going.
Well, Donna, I can't thank you enough. You're a positive person here tonight. And I want you to email with Marianne McLaren and with Laura Hall.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I'm willing to help out or do whatever. If I can cut down all those trees. I mean, I even emailed Detroit Edison because of I stood there and watched them cut my maple, and they didn't massacre it. But my girlfriend, Diane, 2 doors down, they took the pine trees, instead of tapping them below the lines, they shaved the whole bottom off. I guarantee you, the first ice storm we have, it's gonna fall on that person's house.
Yeah.
Period. That is just inconsiderate work of these people. So we need to look at that also.
Right.
How are they trimming these trees? I mean, I've seen pines fall, so.
Yeah.
It's late, I'm leaving.
That's okay. Thank you very much. All right, next. Got to move on.
You're doing it.
Hello, my name is Damon Kruger. I'm a resident of Plymouth Township, and I'm also a member of the Environmental Leadership Commission. And I just wanted to speak on behalf of our group when I say that we are actually very excited to become a tree city. There's a lot of communities in our area, of course, that have also done this, and they've been a Tree City USA for decades. We are also very happy to partner and to be able to come up with something that's agreeable and responsible for our citizens. As a citizen, I just wanted to make a couple of comments as well. And there was a question about clear-cutting private properties. I've seen this numerous times in my neighborhood alone. That's over in Green Meadows. And this is something that is definitely troubling to see. So let's not pretend that it doesn't happen outside of large developments, because it certainly does. So I think besides that, I don't really have anything else to say, but I wanted to just provide a positive note on becoming a tree city.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Thank you.
Thank you again. So I also want to say, I don't think the legislation is bad, and of course you don't, creating it is a lot of work, so I don't think you just throw it all out and try to start from scratch every time, or else nothing would ever happen. I actually think it's pretty good. I commend the Environmental Committee. I think they've done a good job. I just think that it needs a little more tweaking to be ecologically sound, because these types of things do get kind of reused, and they don't get all the revisions that they should have. The other thing is, I am concerned because I know the economic harm that gets caused when people make changes to their landscape by removing trees, or then they put in an impervious surface or a pool, and then the neighbor gets water in the basement for the first time in 50 years. So it is important. It's important. It has lots of value. It has lots of economic value and other value. So I am in favor of it. I just think it needs to be tweaked. And then I think for this community, it might need to be more of some type of reward system rather than what people see as a penalty system because I am in favor of it happening. I don't want it to backfire. There's been issues with the Endangered Species Act where, something may have backfired because people I'm going to cut down all my trees before anybody, before this legislation takes place. So I think a reward system would work better if there was some sort of little credit every time you put in a good species of tree, an ecologically sound tree. And maybe even things added, like you can't put a tree 5 feet from your house, based on the size, that sort of thing. The other thing, I just want to clarify, your willow tree species roots will not go a mile. Out of our 18 native trees in Michigan, 16 are shrubs, so an 8-foot tree is not going to send a root off to a mile, more like 100 feet.
I read that on the internet. It must be true.
That sounds like a reputable site.
on Facebook.
But thank you for your hard work on this, and have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Very good, then.
I have some information.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
No, you go, Chuck.
We said that this was we use the word in here, restorative. An interesting exercise. If you look at photographs from 70 years ago, or World War II, or even the 1950s, and Richard Charlin probably can vouch this, there's almost no trees in Plymouth Township. We have far more trees now than we had 70 years ago.
Yeah, no question.
So we've substantially restored a lot of trees compared with years ago. In fact, if you go to northern Michigan and you look at photographs from 100 years ago, or no, the 1930s, there's no trees either. They're all gone. So we've made a huge improvement in this state over the last 70 years.
We should be rewarded for that, so.
But we are. It looks beautiful.
Yeah. No, we have to, we have
Pardon?
more stuff to do.
We're the same size as we were 70 years ago.
Okay, so, anybody else, well, is that on this issue, or what? Are we gonna have public comments at the end? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Those are gonna be before the closed session.
Yeah. So, I'm done with item F3, and we'll come back to you with some revised stuff. I'll work with Laura and the commissioners, and give me a call too, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, we're going to move on to public comment, limited to 3 minutes. Mr. Zantom.
I forgot a couple things. I was informed today that you cannot plant a tree within 15 feet of a power line, and we've planted them over here in the park under the power lines, is one thing. And then, I was over at a friend's house today, and there's all kind of invasive trees. They're in the park, and they're coming into the neighbors' yards, and they're planting, self-planting trees in there, invasive trees. So we got to get our own park in order before we go after other people. They're all up and down the trees, and we've had, during the election, I was over at the polls, and they were asking one of our trustees up here if we could help them do something about these trees and brush that's coming through the fence there, invading their yards. A lot of invasive trees that are outlawed in this ordinance, so we got to get our own house in order. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else? Okay, board comments. I'm going to go around the horn, starting with, let's start with Bob.
I'm good.
Okay. Actually, I should start with myself, because that's the way I usually do it. Let me just update you real quick on a couple things. The Household Hazardous Waste Weeks that we just concluded was, I think, highly successful. We had 1,086 cars come through. So typically for Household Hazardous Waste Day, when the one day that we do it, anywhere between 1,000 and 1,200 is considered pretty good. So I think this is a darn good number for the first time out. So we are going to have a more formal presentation on that in June at one of our June meetings. Sarah Weissel will be here to give us hopefully some more detail, and then we'll be seeking some recommendation. We are going to have a Plymouth Township Memorial Day ceremony on Memorial Day at noon. We're going to have it right down the street here at the First Responders Memorial, the Wayne County First Responders Memorial at Haggerty and Hines Drive. So we've got it should be a short service, probably about 40 minutes. We've got a good speaker lined up, and it's a very solemn ceremony. We'll also be taking time to remember our first responders as well. I do want to mention, the chief did mention this, but we had an officer who I think really this could have been a horrible tragedy for our community last night. He was in a squad car on M14 responding to some kind of an incident, and he was apparently in his vehicle and was hit by a idiot driver at over 100 miles an hour. I don't know.
He was parked on the shoulder?
Yeah, he was parked on the shoulder. And, you know, this kind of thing happens way too often around the country, and it's very disturbing. The officer is okay. Our fire department responded immediately. I think he is home now, recovering. Is that okay?
Some good vehicle engineering to absorb that kind of speed.
Yeah, he was real lucky. So we should all just say a prayer of thanks that he is okay, because this could have been a great tragedy.
What happened to the person that was the driver of the car that hit?
Tom, I don't know.
Did they die?
He was transported to the hospital.
He was transported to the hospital.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Alcohol involved?
No, just
Bad judgment.
Bad judgment, dumb mistakes. What time of night was that? What time of day? About midnight, okay.
Or fell asleep.
Also, I've been in constant communication with our Congresswoman's office regarding the COVID funding that we are entitled to receive. That number may go up. It'll probably be hopefully about $2.8 million. We will get it in 2 separate checks. One check will be arriving this fall. The next check would arrive next year. And we're still trying to determine what we can spend that money on. The U.S. Treasury Department is working on a formula that every community can employ. That formula would be used to determine what they would consider lost revenue. So that's the thing, the key word that we want to hang our hat on is lost revenue. Because
that'll be a challenge.
We all, according to the federal government, lost revenue during COVID. So that money that is determined as lost revenue, we hope could be spent on infrastructure like the sidewalk gap project and sidewalks and many of the things that our residents really, really want. So keep your fingers crossed on that, but we would still have money left over that we probably would have to spend on water and sewer and things like that.
That's the 150-page document you sent us.
Yes, yeah, it's 150
from the federal
pages.
Government,
yes,
explaining how to spend it.
Exactly, and that document is now being modified as well. So I'll keep you posted on that. That's all I have. Jerry Vorva, you okay?
Everything is fine.
Everything's awesome. Mark?
Do you want to just touch on the audit briefly?
Yeah.
Well, we've completed the work on the audit. The auditors have come in and done their process for checking on all aspects of our government. And today we had a meeting where they gave us drafts on the audit, and everything is worked out just beautifully. As a matter of fact, and I think they'll say that it's probably the best audit they've seen in the history of Plymouth Township.
Yeah,
and
we passed with flying colors, and the auditors will be here June 8th.
June 8th.
To give us a formal presentation, and we have to adopt the budget.
This will be the 5th year in a row that we've performed it on time, and so we're very thankful for Ginger and Carol in our finance department, and of course the Treasury Department is very instrumental in getting that the help on that, and so we're very thankful for that, and they've done just an outstanding job on this whole audit, considering that some of it had to be done kind of remotely because of COVID, and so it was a lot of extra work in doing that, and so the finance staff did just a wonderful job, and we're very thankful. Thank you, Mark, also.
And we will not have a study session in June, so our next meeting here will be on June 8th. And as of now, all I've got is the annual audit report. We'll have Plant Moran here and Ginger, and Jerry's absolutely right. She has really turned this, I thought we were doing well, but she has really taken us to another level of professionalism. Okay, so Mark, you're all set.
All good here.
All
Yep.
set.
All set,
Thank
Chuck
you.
Hermy?
Our 2 pressure reducing valves are supposed to be completed by the end of this week. Can you have somebody send me a status of whether that's going to happen?
I believe there was a test this afternoon or this morning, and Pat Felrath was out there. So if you want to email me and Patrick,
okay.
he'll give you a status
This is
report.
one of the driest springs on record, so we're going to be using a lot of water.
Yeah.
And the water system needs to be in tip-top shape.
Yes, email us tomorrow, and then
Okay.
we'll get Patrick working on that. I forgot John Stewart. I can't believe it. So you all set? Can we go?
Yeah, I'm.
Okay. You all set, though? Seriously? Okay. So I have to read this one. So at 9:37 PM, I am moving that a closed session be called for the purpose of an attorney consultation on specific pending litigation involving Wayne County Circuit Court Case number 20-002999-NI Austin Lakos versus Plymouth Township, and to discuss settlement strategy in accordance with the Michigan Open Meetings Act, Section 8E, MCL 15268.8. Is there a second? Second by Clerk Forva. Roll call is necessary.
Supervisor Heisler?
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton?
Yes.
Trustee Kermit?
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz?
Yep.
Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Monahan?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion carries.
So for the purposes of the public, we have to go upstairs now. We will be coming back here simply to close the meeting. There will be no other deliberation or anything, so unless you really enjoy hearing us talk, have a great night and safe travels.
Thank you.